Good morning. I just woke up from a nap and realized, oh no, I'm supposed to be going live. So I hope everyone is having a good morning so far. It is Saturday, which means it's AA Day. It is September 30th. Oh, wait a couple of minutes. I'm going to put the link in the description in the chat if anyone would like to come up. You can do that. There we go. So the chat is there in case if anybody would like to come up and share or help me read the book. Today we're reading a big book. It's Jim's story. So, rules, no bullying, no harassment, no judgment. Be kind to each other if you're going to be in the chat. And know that the chat probably will be uploaded because I still have not figured out how to not get it uploaded. Seeing as I go through StreamYard for it. Hey, Lily. So I'm sorry I'm a little late. I'm still not awake all the way from my nap. I got up way too early this morning and decided to go back to sleep. So let's say the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So what I do to get the steps is I know them by heart, but I always tell you can get your steps and your traditions in the contents of the book of the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book. I'm not sponsored by the soda can that you just saw. Okay, step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends wherever possible to such people, wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10. Continue to take personal inventory of ourselves and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And so, I always put in, even if I'm running late, which I did this just a little bit ago, I put in the description of the video the story we're on and the page we are reading. So if you don't know how to find the description, you go to the video itself, you click on the video, it'll pop up the video, and then where it says description under the video screen, it has the description, and you can push the more right there, and it'll open up more, and you can see what story and page and book we're in, so that is there for you all to be able to read along if you have a book. If you don't, I'm going to read it anyway, so no worries. Okay, this is the 6th story, and this is Jim's story. This physician, one of the earliest members of AA, First Black Group, tells of how freedom came as he worked among his people. I was born in a little town in Virginia in an average religious home. My father, a Negro, was a country physician. I remember in my early youth, my mother dressed me just as she did my 2 sisters, and I wore curls until I was 6 years of age. At that time, I started school, and that's how I got rid of the curls. I found that even then I had fears and inhibitions. We lived just a few doors from the First Baptist Church, and when they had funerals, I remembered very often asking my mother whether the person was good or bad and whether they were going to heaven or hell. I was about 6 then. My mother had been recently converted and actually had become a religious fanatic. That was her main neurotic manifestation. She was very possessive with us children. Mother drilled into me a very pre-essential point of view as to sex relations, as well as to motherhood and womanhood. I'm sure my ideas as to what life should be like were quite different from that of an average person with whom I associated. Later on in life, that took its toll. I realize that now. About this time, an incident took place in grade school that I have never forgotten because it made me realize that I was actually a physical coward. During recess, we were playing basketball, and I had accidentally tripped a fellow just a little larger than I was. He took the basketball and smashed me in the face with it. That was enough provocation to fight, but I didn't fight, and I realized after recess why I didn't. It was fear that hurt and disturbed me a great deal. My mother was of the old school and figured that anyone I associated with should be of the type. Of course, in my day, times had changed. She just she just hadn't changed with the times. I don't know whether it was right or wrong, but at least I know that people weren't thinking the same. We weren't even permitted to play cards in our home, but father would give us just a little toddy with whiskey and sugar and warm water now and then. We had no whiskey in the house other than my father's private stock. I never saw him drunk in my life, although he'd take a shot in the morning and usually one in the evening, and so did I. But for the most part, he kept his whiskey in his office. The only time that I ever saw mother take anything alcoholic was around Christmas time when she would drink some eggnog or light wine. In my first year of high school, mother suggested that I not join the cadet unit. She got a medical certificate so that I should not have to join it. I don't know whether she was a pacifist or whether she just thought that in the event of another war it would have some bearing on my joining up. But then I realized that my point of view on the opposite sex wasn't entirely like that of most of the boys I knew. For that reason, I believe I married at a much younger age than I would have. Had it not been for my home training, my wife and I have been married for some 30 years now. Vi was the first girl that I ever took out. I had quite a heartache after her then because she wasn't the type of girl that my mother wanted me to marry in the first place. She had been married before. I was her second husband. My mother resented it so much that the first Christmas after our marriage, she didn't even invite us to dinner. After our first child came, my parents both became allies. Then, in later days, after I became an alcoholic, they both turned against me. My father had come out of the South and he had suffered a great deal down there. He wanted to give me the very best, and he taught that nothing but being a doctor would suffice. On the other hand, I believe that I've always been medically inclined, though I have never been able to see medicine quite as the average person sees it. I do surgery because that's something that you can see. It's more tangible, but I can remember the postgraduate days and during internship that very often I'd go to a patient's bed and start a process of elimination, and then very often I'd wind up guessing That wasn't the way it was with my father. I think with him, it possibly was a gift, intuitive diagnosis. Father thought the years, or through the years, had built up a very good mail order business because at that time there wasn't too much money in medicine. I don't think I suffered too much as far as the racial situation was concerned because I was born into it and knew nothing other than that. A man wasn't actually mistreated, so if he was, he could only resent it. He could do nothing about it. On the other hand, I got quiet, quite a different picture. Farther, farther south, economic conditions had a great deal to do with it because I've often heard my father say that his mother would take one of the old time flour sacks and cut a hole through the bottom and two corners of it, and there you'd have a gown, sorry. Of course, when father finally came to Virginia to work his way through school, he resented the Southern cracker, as he often called them, so much that he didn't even go back to his mother's funeral. He said he never wanted to set foot in the deep South again, and he didn't. I went to elementary and high school in Washington, D.C., and then to Howard University. My internship was in Washington. I never had too much trouble in school. I was able to get my work out. All my troubles arose when I was thrown socially among groups of people. As far as school was concerned, I made fair grades throughout. This was around 1935, and it was about this time that I actually started drinking. During the year 1930 to 1935, due to the Depression and its aftermath, business went from bad to worse. I then had my own medical practice in Washington, but the practice slackened and all the mail order business started to fall off. Dad, due to having spent most of his time in a small Virginia town, didn't have any too much money, and the money he had saved and the property he had acquired were in Washington. He was in his late 50s, and all that he had undertaken fell upon my shoulders at his death in 1928. For the first couple of years, it wasn't too bad because the momentum kept things going. But when things became crucial, everything started going haywire. I started going haywire with them. At this point, I believe I had only been intoxicated on maybe 3 or 4 occasions, and certainly whiskey was no problem to me. My father had purchased a restaurant which he felt would take up some of my spare time, and that's how I met Vi. She came in for her dinner. I'd known her 5 or 6 months. To get rid of me one evening, she decided to go to the movies, and she and another friend, a very good friend of mine who owned a drugstore across the street from us, came by only about 2 hours later and said that he had seen Vi downtown. I said that she told me she was going to the movies, and I became foolishly disturbed about it. And as things snowballed, I decided to go out and get drunk. That's the first time I was ever really drunk in my life. The fear of the loss of Vi and the feeling that though she had the right to do as she pleased, she should have told me the truth about it upset me. That was my trouble. I thought that all women should be perfect. I don't think I actually started. Could you have Mike go down and get me a piece of gum out of the car? I think that all women should be perfect. I don't think I actually started to drink pathologically until approximately 1935. About that time, I had lost particularly all my property except the place we were living in. Things had just gone from bad to worse. It meant that I had to give up a lot of the things that I had been accustomed to. And that wasn't the easiest thing in the world for me. I think that was basically the thing that started me drinking in 1935. I started drinking alone then. I'd go to my into my home with a bottle, and I remember clearly how I would look around to see if I was watching. Something should have told me then that things were haywire. I can remember her watching. There came a time when she spoke to me about it, and I would say that I had a bad cold or that I wasn't feeling well. That went on for maybe 2 months, and then she got after me again about drinking. At that time, the Repel whiskeys were back, and I'd go to the store and buy more whiskey and take it to my office and put it under my desk. First in one place and then in another, and there soon was an accumulation of empty bottles. My brother in law was living with us at that time, and I said to Vi, maybe the bottles are brothers. I don't know. Ask him about it. I don't know anything about the bottles. I actually wanted a drink. Besides feeling that, I had to have a drink. From that point on, it's just the average drinker story. I got to the place where I'd look forward to the weekends, drinking, and pacify myself by saying that the weekends were mine, that it didn't interfere with my family or my business if I drank on the weekends. But the weekends stretched on into Mondays, and time soon came when I drank every day. My practice at the juncture was just barely getting us a living. A peculiar thing happened in 1940. That year, on a Friday night, a man whom I had known for years came to my office. My father had treated him many years prior to this. This man's wife had been suffering for a couple months, and when I came in, he owed me a little bill. I filled a prescription for him. The following day, Saturday, he came back and said, Jim, I owe you for that prescription last night. I didn't pay you. I thought, I know you didn't pay me because you didn't get a prescription, he said. Yes, You did know the prescription that you gave me for my wife last night. Fear gripped me then because I could remember nothing about it. It was the first blackout I had to recognize as a blackout. The next morning, I carried another prescription to this man's house and exchanged it for a bottle his wife had. Then I said to my wife, something has to be done. I took that bottle of medicine and gave it to a very good friend of mine who was a pharmacist and had it analyzed. And the bottle was perfectly all right. But I knew at that point that I couldn't stop. And I knew that I was a danger to myself and to others. I had a long talk with a psychiatrist, but nothing came of it. And I had also, just about that time, talked with a minister for whom I had a great deal of respect. He went into the religious side. Okay, he went into the religious side and told me that I didn't attend church as regularly as I should, and that he felt, more or less, that this was responsible about that time that I was getting ready to leave school high school. A revelation came to me about God, and it made things very compatible or complicated, for me. The thought came to me that if God, as my mother said, was a vengeful God, he couldn't be a loving God. I wasn't able to comprehend it. I rebelled, and from that time on, I don't think I attended church more than a dozen times. After this incident in 1940, I sought some other means of livelihood. I had a very good friend who was in the government service, and I went to him about a job. He got me one. I worked for the government about a year and still maintained my evening office practice. When the government agencies were dis, dis, discredited, anyway, I don't know that word. Then I went south because they told me that the particular county I was going to in North Carolina was a dry country. I thought this would be a big help to me. I would meet some new faces and be in a dry country. But I find that after I got to North Carolina, it wasn't any different. The state was different, but I wasn't. Nevertheless, I stayed sober for about 6 months because I knew that Vi was to come later and bring the children. We had two girls and a boy at that time. Something happened. Vi had secured work in Washington. She was also in the government service. I started inquiring where I could get a drink. And of course, I found it wasn't hard. I think whiskey was cheaper there than it was in Washington. Matters got worse, all the time until finally they got so bad that I was re-investigated by the government. Being an alcoholic, sick and having some good sense left, I survived the investigation. Then I had my first bad stomach hemorrhage. I was out of work for about 4 days. I got into a lot of financial difficulties too. I borrowed $500 from the bank and 300 from the loan shop, and I drank that up pretty fast. Then I decided I'd go back to Washington. My wife received me graciously, although she was living in a one room with kitchen affair. She'd been reduced to that. I promised that I was going to do the right thing. We were now both working in the same agency. I continued to drink. I got drunk one night in October, went to sleep in the rain, and woke up with pneumonia. We continued to work together, and I continued to drink. And I guess deep down within our hearts, we both knew I couldn't stop drinking. I thought I didn't want to stop. We had several fights, and on one or two occasions I struck her with my fist. She decided that she didn't want any more of that. So she went to court and talked it over with the judge. They cooked up a plan whereby she didn't have to be mistreated by me if she didn't want to be. I went back to my mother's for a few days until things cooled off because the district attorney had put out a summons for me to come see him in his office. A policeman came to the door and asked for James S. But there wasn't any James S. there. He came back several times. Within 10 days, I got locked up for being drunk, and this same policeman was in the station house as I was being booked. I had to put up $300 bond because he was carrying the same summons around in his pocket for me. So I went down to talk to the district attorney, and the arrangement was made that I would go home to stay with my mother, and that meant that Vi and I were separated. I continued to work and continued to go to lunch with Vi, and none of our acquaintances on the job knew that we had separated. Very often we rode to and from work together, but being separated really gouged me deep down. Uh, I think I'm gonna stop there. It's a long one. Yeah, I've been reading for a half hour. My eyeballs. But so this means this chapter lets us know that uh, we're not the only whites aren't the only race that are can be alcoholics, and we're not the only people. It affects everyone the same way, regardless of anything. And I remember that too, hiding it everywhere, thinking that we were hiding it great. And we were just hiding it from ourselves and we couldn't remember sometimes where it was. Uh, my cousin and I did that when we were teenagers. We took a bunch of beer and hid them somewhere in the woods, and we never found them. But yeah, I remember those days trying to hide it. I don't miss that, that's for sure. Do not miss that. And I can relate also to the situation with um, the wife in the story, because my husband, instead of being the wife, it was the husband uh, that was having to put up with someone who drank all the time and um, did a whole lot of not wonderful things. And I'm just glad that I'm not like that anymore. And I am sober. He's over here going like this. But I didn't go to psychiatric. I did go to a doctor because when I finally admitted for the first time that I was an alcoholic, I went to my doctor and finally was put on something for my depression. And then I got put on something for my anxiety. And so I still take those to this day. It helps me with uh, feeling sad and lonely. It helps me get through my days. Um, Whereas before I was using the alcohol to cover up my feelings. And you all know you get all happy, bubbly, and stuff when you're drinking, and then if you get beyond a point, you become a crybaby, and then when you get beyond that point, you become a real jerk. Well, I did all those. By no means do I ever want to be that person again. Um, I can vouch for the going back out. It's true. You need to work your steps every day, and you can only go one day at a time. Because I set myself up when I first quit the first time. I set myself up. I was like, at a year later, I was like, oh, well, I can, get this drink and put it in my refrigerator and keep it there. I did that for quite a while, but then I drank it. And when I drank it, that was it. That's all it took. Just like it says, one drink, and there I went, right back down to the bottom of the bottle. And it's not a fun place to be. Not fun at all. And so I drank for about another year. So I think it was in 2014 that I quit. I think I was still in my 30s. But this time when I quit, I had never been to AA yet for me drinking, but a good friend of mine, uh, we were texting and he says, well, why don't you meet me at AA? There's a meeting out in our hometown. And I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. And so I went, and it was definitely different hearing people say stuff about their alcohol days, when they when you're still drinking. And I could relate to them, and that that helped me to feel a little more comfortable. Mind you, it still took me quite a while to get to where I would talk about my story or talk about how things made me feel. And so that did eventually come. As you can tell, I'm talking about it now. My sponsor, who I got the day after I started AA, um, she signed her and I up to do guest speakers. And she didn't say anything to me. And yeah, I did the speaker. I was the 10-minute speaker. And so I did share some of my story. And then I've never hidden the fact that I'm a recovering alcoholic. A lot of people know. Obviously, I do it on YouTube now. But that's how I have come to know some people is uh, through saying that I am a recovering alcoholic. And I have gained like so many new friends just for letting them know that I am open about that. And it makes them feel more comfortable being able to talk to you about that. And that's what I got this gift for, is to be able to help others, because it doesn't stop with me. There's many others that need the same help that I did and the same help that I get even to this day. I don't go to meetings every day, but I do go to meetings when I need to, and I have this meeting that I do. It helps, and I don't know how it helps, but it does. And I always tell the newcomers, it starts with you. You need to control you. You cannot do anything other than what it has to do with you. So no matter what, just know that as long as you have that strength and that courage inside of yourself, even if you don't, if you admit that you're an alcoholic and you need help, there's a lot of help, a lot of help. And there's so many people that know the struggle that they might still be dealing with today. They might need somebody to help them as they help you. And that's what I get from doing these meetings is I get the help. He's over there licking his paws, getting my blanket soaked. But I get my help from helping you guys, and I just hope that it is really helping, because that's my whole purpose of doing these, is helping the next person and sharing that there is hope, there is a way. You just have to want it for the right reason, and that is the right reason is for yourself. Because if you're planning to quit for someone else, it might work for a little while. It might work for a little while, but there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee AA will help, but there is help, and that is what I'm guaranteeing is there's help. You just have to reach out, because after all, we cannot just spot you and say, "Oh, that person's an alcoholic." That's not what we do. We have we let the alcoholic who still suffers come to us, because then that it is their control. They brought themselves to us. We're not going and trying to force them to do the sober thing. My sister, I nagged her and nagged her and nagged her, and then I read a part in the book that it says when you do that, it just makes them not want to come more. And so finally I was like, I'm not going to ask her to come anymore. I'll just give her a book. And, that worked. It worked. So, yeah, I think I gave her a book. But, so another thing that I always suggest is on your apps, go to the app store and get the daily reflections of whatever you want to choose of your daily reflections, because there are a lot of them that are downloadable and it's free. After all, everything for AA is free, except for you got to buy books or go to a meeting. Maybe you can get a sponsor there, and my sponsor has given me like 3 or 4 of each book because I give them to somebody else. So the reason I do that is because my sponsor did that for me. So yeah, I will give away my book if I have to. Um, so, but anyways, this app will hold your time of sober, it, daily reflections. Some of them have the big book in 12 traditions and 12 steps and the sober living, and they have the audio ones. It says listen to the big book, the 12 and 12, and the Joe and Charlie tapes. You can read those here. Read literature and pamphlets, online meeting finder, take inventory, tap share this with friends. So what I do is I always say my sobriety, which is number one to me, and I have 8 years, 10 months, and 15 days, or 3,241 days. And then I go into the daily reflections, and it's September 30th. The circle and the triangle. The circle stands for the whole world of AA, and the triangle stands for AA's 3 agencies of recovery, unity, and service. Within our wonderful new world, we have found freedom from our fatal obsession. AA Comes of Age, page 139. Early in my life, I became employed in its services, and I found the explanations of our society's logo to be very appropriate. First, a circle of love and service with a well-balanced triangle inside the base of which represents our recovery through the 12 steps. Then the other 2 sides representing unity and service respectively. respectively. The 3 sides of the triangle are equal. As I grew in AA, I soon identified myself with this symbol. I am the circle, and the sides of the triangle represent 3 aspects of my personality: physical, emotional, sanity, and spirituality, the latter forming the symbol base. Taken together, all 3 aspects of my personality translates into a sober and happy life. Yep. So, again, I hope you guys are having a wonderful Saturday and uh, sober and spending time with the ones you love and living life to its fullest. And if somebody needs any help, there's always help. There's meetings everywhere. You can buy the books from Amazon. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, but you can buy them there. Um, you can check them out at your library. Some meetings have enough that they can let you use one while you're in a meeting. They may give you one. Um, so just know you're not alone in this journey, and there's a lot of us that are here and going through it too. And there is help. There's definitely help, and you just have to want to get that help for yourself and not for someone else. So, anyways, I'm gonna say the Serenity Prayer and let you guys get on with your weekend. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys. Be safe.